learn, and he thought it made sense that you would play well, like right out of the chute to start a season. But maybe it was a fluke.
Got the positive vibes going. I can see it. So we'll, it's all clear in my head, and then all of a sudden you get on the course, and that much harder. So I think the problem is you go to the driving range and stuff. You're not drinking 6 or so beers like you are with the boys out there. So maybe I need to work on my preparation. More so matching what we're doing live.
Right. Or start walking. I've been walking the last few years. Ian, I started playing golf very regularly. This is my 4th season now after not playing much at all for, my 30s all the way into my 50s. And I'm walking, and that really puts a limit on the amount of drinking that you're going to do because you really got to carry it with you. And, who wants to do that?
That's a legit good workout, though. If you're walking 18, you're getting your steps in. That was on Saturday. It was, one of the cart path only days. And afterwards, I was a little more, you feel it in the hips a little bit more the next day.
For sure.
Do you aim for the cart path? That's a bad sign. If you're aiming for the cart path, don't hit it left if the cart path is on the right. You have to stay on the cart path.
Well, it's nice of you to congratulate Mike on his hosting this ship chasing podcast. You, Ian, we don't know each other that well, but I've always enjoyed these appearances when you've made time for us. I'm a Fubo TV subscriber, and I don't know, a couple of months ago, I think it was right after the season ended, maybe it was even late in the NFL season. I was just, hey, what's on here? I don't even, I really go in there and I watch the Sabres play and the golf on the weekends and whatever. It's not, I don't spend a lot of time in the app. You know what I mean? I know where I'm going and I get there. And I scroll down to the bottom and there's this little, what's the Chiefs off-season plan? Or this team or this player and that. And I click on it and I wasn't sure what you looked like, but I hear the voice and I'm like, I think this is that Ian Hartitz guy. Is that going well? Is that still going? And it was you, as it turns out. That's pretty cool. It was nice to see you visiting my TV.
Yeah, man, appreciate you. But yeah, the Fantasy Life Show, you can find us on Fubo, YouTube, podcast, wherever you get it there. Some might argue I have a face that's a little bit better for radio, but that's for everyone to make up their mind about. But no, it's fun, man. We're live, not always live, but we record Monday through Friday out there. So I always find something to talk about. I was, before this, talking to my buddy Dwayne McFarland about some of the wide receiver movement over the course of the last few days. But yeah, man, I know in today's day and age, particularly with free agency and the trades, always some sort of goodness going on in football. We can draft whenever. So we're just trying to be, there along for the ride.
What the Bills have done is, at that position anyway, is Joshua Palmer. Losing Hollins, probably losing Amari Cooper, who has not signed anywhere yet, as far as I know, and then adding Palmer. What's the net result of all this for you?
Man, I get the idea that Palmer is a good fit for what they have because he does give them, that guy that more one-on-one can route some dudes up on the outside. And when you look at, Keon Coleman, more of a jump ball specialist, at least at this point, Khalil Shakir is more of your slot yak guy, similar sentiment for Curtis Samuel. He does fit that mold, but you had Stephon Diggs, who just did everything Josh Palmer does at a much higher level. You can talk about him, being a bigger issue in the locker room or whatever. But I guess my thing for Bills fans is just it's 3rd and 7. You're facing the Chiefs in the AFC Championship. Do you really want your play to be going to Josh Palmer in a one-on-one situation? So I think he's fine, but I just don't think it's the sort of needle-moving room I was hoping needle-moving move. There we go. That I was hoping for out of this group. But at the end of the day, you could also say that Palmer is a solid wide receiver, and should you be trying to reinvent the wheel when you guys were, an iffy spot and Dalton Kincaid dropping a ball away from maybe overcoming those demons. So it's fine. I think, it's a free agency move where a guy got paid $36 million, so we're forced to talk about it quite a bit. But in terms of Josh Palmer being someone that I think is going to strike fear into the opposing defenses, don't think he's quite that guy.
Yeah. Do you think the Bills maybe got away with it last year, not having, everybody eats was the mantra here. They did pivot to Cooper, which I think is important to remember that, that was the plan going in. They never really replaced Diggs. And then they decided 6 weeks or so into the season, hey, we better do something. And they did. And Cooper, the best you could do is speculate that he opened things up for someone else because he didn't really do much at all himself as far as catching passes and having a big impact in games statistically. And now with Hollins gone, I kind of feel like there is still a spot. And I don't know how much attention you pay to what teams say about guys in an offseason, but the coach and the GM have both been pretty pointedly critical of Coleman and the way he handled, really, I think, largely coming back from injury. So I wonder how all set they might feel like they are or not.
Yeah, and that's what kind of stinks about Coleman, because before he had that injury, it seemed like he was starting to really come on. And, he is one of those guys where you saw it with Josh Allen. I mean, what was that Detroit game, I think, where he just bombed it 70 yards downfield, told Keon to keep on going. I mean, there was enough trust there that Josh was willing to lay it up to him. I think it was actually the Rams game that we saw. Either way, Amari Cooper, though, I was surprised to see him never exactly get the chance to keep going throughout the season. I mean, he had the debut where Keon was telling him where to run. Even at the end, had that nice contested catch touchdown against the Jets. But I do wonder, man, because, he missed Week 18 because of a personal reason. Then we had the hand and wrist sprain going on that he was kind of dealing with. I know Keon had a hand injury as well. So I'm just not quite sure what either guy had going in terms of being 100% healthy. But clearly they're still trying to figure out who can be that ace guy on the outside. Now, to your original point, though, did it really matter, again, when you were that close to winning the AFC as it began? Not necessarily thinking it overly did. So if you are going to war with your top three being, Shakur, Palmer, and Keon, do think it could be worse. But, man, it certainly would be a great time for Dalton Kincaid to really emerge as that number one, because that's been the thing. Like, we were hoping, obviously, when they used the first-round pick on him, that he could be not Travis Kelce, but that was kind of the idea, right? It was to get this tight end who's more of a wide receiver who can lead your pass game. And so far through 2 years, for one reason or another, just hasn't quite panned out just yet.
Could be worse. Definitely could be better. Ian Hartitz with us from Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here. Ian, of course, joining us on the West Her hotline. James Cook, Ian, so you've been drafting. Here's a guy, 18 touchdowns last year, 16 rushing, which nobody thought was possible, I would say. Then more in the playoffs. Running back 14 in fantasy drafts. He wants a contract, but it's still March, and I don't know. I mean, we're not freaking out about it. We're talking about it, though. What about Cook? He's always kind of been lukewarm as a fantasy asset, and even maybe as a real-life asset until last year when it just popped. Is that for you drafting-wise, or just your assessment of him as a player going forward? Seems like if you got anything close to last season again, and you're drafting him there, that's a huge win.
It was just funny seeing him break out the way he did, and even people that I'm sure were pounding the table to draft him, like, in no way saw it coming to fruition in this manner, right? Because, all of his receiving numbers actually took a step back, and I know he dropped, 3 or 4 touchdowns in 2023, but still, you just don't even see many running backs, have the opportunity to drop these downfield wheel routes in the first place. So I thought if Cook was really going to take a big step forward in 2024, it would be as one of these rare running backs who's also more or less the number 2 option in their pass game. So instead, like you said, man, got the 16 rushing touchdowns on the ground, and his touchdown rate, 7.5% of his touches were turned into scores, easily number one among all running backs. And it was actually the 7th highest mark in a single season since 2000. So we just, when we hear guys saying, "Oh, he's going to regress" and stuff, it's one of those things where I don't want to, I don't want to harp on it too much, because hey, they had to obviously be really good to have numbers that you think are going to regress in the first place. But just again, in an offense that still likes using Ray Davis on early downs, obviously Josh Allen's always going to factor into the equation near the 5-yard line. Do I think he's going to score 2 touchdowns? No, I'd take the over on that. But 16, not exactly seeing that either. So, like anything, probably going to finish, somewhere around the middle. But I just wonder, when you're looking at the Bills, they've already decided that they don't apparently want to be in the business of overpaying a wide receiver. So are you really going to all of a sudden look at James Cook and make him one of the highest paid running backs when, let's face it, the one game he did miss, Ray Davis looked very good, filling in for him as both a rusher and receiver. And even Ty Johnson on third downs.
Yep.
Ty Johnson, number 1 last year among all running backs in yards per touch. And I know it's a small sample size of that, but he's another dude who certainly was, showing his worth. So obviously with Buffalo, again, not going to be big spenders as long as Josh Allen is making all of his money. I think they've done a great job of, extending some of their players, a year or two before they hit the open market. Maybe the Bengals could learn a thing or two about that. But when I just look at maybe what they could do in this draft, not that running back is a big need, because I do think with Cook, Davis, and Ty Johnson, that's perfectly fine. They accomplished everything they needed to last year. But to see them have pick 30, pick 56, and pick 62, there's some really good running backs that are going to be going off the board inside the top 3 rounds. So I do wonder if, we see them maybe go after one of the Ohio State Cats or something like that at the end of round 2, maybe spelling the end of James Cook's tenure after this season.
Yeah, I feel like, few things here. The touchdown breakout is like the worst possible time to negotiate a contract with the guy, as far as I'm concerned. Like, no thanks on that. And yeah, I've been saying, like, I don't know. I know how it will be perceived out here, or would be, if the Bills were to do what you just suggested. It would be like you're telling James Cook, forget about $15 million a year, and come on in and you can go be a free agent after this year, I think is what they'd be saying. Or maybe even more so dramatically, being worried about making sure they are covered in case he decides not to show up for some amount of time because he's unhappy that he hasn't gotten the money. Like an early pick in a running back rich draft would be a big move by the Bills, I think.
Yeah, and look, it's nothing against James Cook. I mean, you watched that Chiefs game, and I remember one of the big storylines afterwards was like, why did James Cook not get the ball more? I mean, he's awesome, and if you want to look at him in the just overall hierarchy of running backs, I mean, well, he probably should deserve to get that money from somewhere, but I didn't watch the Bills last season and go like, oh, yeah, like they have everything they need here at running back. That's where the money should be going towards. I watched them not be able to get off the field at the end of that Chiefs game and really not be able to slow down a passing attack that looked really average for large portions of the season. So looking ahead to 2025, I mean, right now, only the Rams, Eagles, and Chiefs, 3 very good teams, I'll admit, but those are the only squads with fewer dollars than the Bills actually devoted to their defense. So I know they brought in Joey Bosa, they got Dane Jackson, a couple things have been going on over there, but man, again, if you are going to have limited resources, which we do in the salary cap era and everything, I'd like to see the Bills, look more to the defense than running back.
Ian Hartitz, I owe you a beer for that one. We can talk running backs with the second round. We can cite you and your take because that's fun stuff. You mentioned your Buckeyes in there, 2 running backs, another receiver who could all be first-round picks, should all be at least by day 2 or even round 2 selected. Henderson, Judkins, and Egbuka at wideout. Let me hear you on Egbuka compared to the several recent star receivers that have come out of Ohio State. How does he rate?
I think he's, it's saying he's the worst of the group. It sounds like an insult, but when you look at the other guys that have come out, it really shouldn't be perceived as that. But my comp for Egbuka, is someone the Bills fans are obviously familiar with. But I think he's Gen Z Robert Woods, where he's solid at everything, but maybe doesn't, have that just one sort of elite skill in his, bag of tools or whatever. He's just, solid out there and a little bit of everything. And guess what? Bobby Trees, fantastic nickname, all-timer, by the way. Some of those Rams years when he was in a well-schemed offense with McVay and Goff doing their things, he was a 1,000-plus yard receiver. They even used him a lot in the run game, and he was also, a really good blocker out there, things that we also saw from Egbuka at Ohio State. But, it's just one of those things where Egbuka, he ended up in his career having more receptions than any Ohio State player in the school's history, but at the same time was never actually the number 1 on any of those teams due to the presence of guys like Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, and the next big thing, Jeremiah Smith. So Egbuka's solid. He's done most of his work out of the slot. I don't think he should be, I don't think he should be viewed as someone who's only confined to the slot. I think he can still be, your Z guy who you get in motion, just ask to block and do things like that. But I would be concerned for any team that's looking to draft Egbuka, thinking like, oh man, this is our 140, 150 target number 1 wide receiver. But you want to add him on as your 2, or God forbid your number 3, then I think we really could be cooking.
So compared to other receivers in the draft, you have Golden, McMillan, of course, probably up top, it seems, Luther, Burden. What about wide receivers this year? I saw a mock draft yesterday where there are only 2 in the first round. McMillan, I think, maybe is mildly controversial, maybe not as fast as people want. What do you see happening in the draft? Who do you like the most?
I mean, definitely be Hunter if he could just decide to play wide receiver. But, maybe after seeing that Derek Stingley Jr. contract, he's all of a sudden feeling just fine sticking out corners. So Hunter's doing his thing. The whole Ted McMillan thing is just kind of weird because, I saw – and shout shout out, I think it was Daniel Jeremiah. He does great work and everything, but he just pointed out today that we haven't had a wide receiver drafted in, the top 15 that ran a 4.5 40 or slower since Mike Evans. And, what we heard from the pro day after some initial claims is that we did have Ted McMillan in the 4.5 range. But that just leaves out guys like Marvin Harrison Jr. and Drake London who chose not to run, period. And honestly, probably made themselves a good amount of money by not choosing to run. So that's what kills me with some of this. I mean, and a couple of weeks ago, everyone's calling, McMillan's afraid to compete. What's going on here? Guys don't want to run. And then they do run, and the times aren't as fast as they would hope. And all of a sudden, everyone's slandering him for it. So the whole, just combine and then pro day just thing, which, by the way, we're still literally in the year 2025 going off of hand times from scouts at a pro day that we don't have any video of. Really is a joke what we got going on there. But I don't think that, those times are anything different from what we see on film from McMillan. When you're 6'5", 215 pounds, you're not going to be running a 4.3. And honestly, I just don't think it should change your opinion based on that time. So for me, McMillan still does deserve to be the wide receiver 1 if we are counting Hunter as a corner. And then I probably would be going with Golden and Luther Burden with Egbuka as my wide receiver 5. So I think it's a bit of a tier drop-off after that. Still got some quality day 2 guys, Trey Harris, some of the Iowa State wide receivers doing good things as well. But I do wonder if maybe it is just a class where we don't exactly have the Brian Thomas Jr., the Malik Neighbors, someone that can come right in and just be a straight-up baller. But if I had to put a chip on anyone, probably would be Ted McMillan.
I can appreciate the line of demarcation that the 4.50 designation and guys not being drafted, the last one being Mike Evans, but Mike Evans, that worked out pretty friggin' good.
You're saying that was a good pick?
I think that was a good pick. The guy has done his 1,000 yards every year of his life.
When the Bills, literally, when the Bills traded up for Watkins, you think maybe they could have just
hung out and taken.
Or Evans went before their pick, but Beckham didn't.
Right.
Beckham didn't.
That's it. Right.
Man, Sammy Watkins before injuries, though, I still remember the things he did to my Buckeyes in the Orange Bowl. That dude was special for a couple of years, man.
What do you like at the top of the draft before we let you go, Ian? So, and I always have to remind myself about Hunter in the context of wide receivers. Everybody thinks he's the best one, and I think of him as a corner. But yes, Tennessee, Cleveland, Giants. Is it 2 quarterbacks, over, under, 1.5? What do you think?
I think we'll get to 2, not necessarily because Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders are deserving of being, top 3 overall draft picks, but it's just the positional importance. We had 6 go in the top 12 picks last year, and, we can argue that all 6 of those guys were better than Ward or Shedeur, but it just seems like, more than ever in, today's day and age, teams understand just how much you are setting up your franchise for success if you can hit on one of these earlier round QBs. And even in the Giants case, Brian Dable and company obviously kind of on their last straw at this point, so why not take a swing in the draft? I mean, if you're looking at, all right, we can either draft Shedeur Sanders at 3 or, bring in Aaron Rodgers, Joe Flacco, Jameis Winston. I'll go ahead and take my chances that hopefully Deion Sanders' freaking kid is actually quite good at football. So, again, I've watched their tape and everything. I agree that, Shedeur, you see the lack of arm strength, obviously not the most athletic guy in the world, but some of these stats, the completion percentage over expected do paint him quite favorably. And then you have Cam Ward, who, really the things he can do off script, in addition to just some of the arm talent he has, when everything is going his way, it's clear why he has fans as well. So I do think we see, a couple of really quarterbacks. Maybe Jackson Dart actually sneaks into the end of round 1. What'll be interesting to me, though, is if someone falls in love with Jalen Milroe.
That's my guy.
Yeah, right, man. The rushing there, just you don't see quarterbacks erase angles in the run game quite like Milroe was able to do. And I understand, complete project as a passer. There's a lot of things not to like there. Took a lot of sacks. The Michigan performance was rough and everything. But, hey, we saw Anthony Richardson go 4th overall, okay? So, if you do have to try to say who has the highest possible ceiling, Milroe's going to be up there. I do wonder if, we could ultimately be surprised at how high he goes.
Bulldog and I have a bet. I said out of the first round. He said top 10. We settled on top half of the first round. Right. So
I'm gonna lose, but whatever. I'm seduced by the traits.
I would have bet all the money in my pocket's not enough.
Portfolio.
Is too much.
Portfolio?
I would have bet a lot of money last year against Penix and Knicks. That's all.
Yeah.
Right.
And top 12, like you said, Ian. Ian, great to catch up with you. It's always fun. If you ever want to do a draft together, I'd be honored. I don't think you and I have ever done that, but I'm sure it would be a great time.
Let's make it happen, man. Sounds great.
All right, let's go. Thanks, Ian.
Appreciate you guys. Take it easy.
Yep, Ian Hartitz, MB Fantasy Life. at Ian Hartitz on, as Bulldog calls it, the X platform, which is because that's what it's actually named.
Yeah, I guess so.
Footballguys.com rookie draft guide comp for Shadur Sanders, Tony Romo.
Wow. All right.
You like that? I don't know. I haven't seen enough of them to any of these guys really